Michael, welcome and join us.
Thanks very much, Jim. Good to be with you once more for my final show on this. And so if you remember, what we did was we took a building like this and we took some alfoil and put it up into the roof so that, in fact, it reflects the light and cuts down on the light that's transmitted through the roof, because nobody wants to see lighting through the roof of a building, especially when you turn the lights out. And then one of the other things we did was we created a little room, as you remember, in this building. And I just created a picture. Well, actually just pulled one off the internet, glued it on there. And then we worked on, okay, how are we going to light this? One of the things we did was we had a fiber going up in this, a small fiber into here. And if you remember, we then put a small fiber actually sticking out. You can't see it, but it's actually sticking out right underneath this door. So what I do is I'm just going to show you some couple of sort of final pictures of this, and then I want to talk just about a couple of other items that might be of interest to you. So if you remember last week, we looked at how much light you need, and I was using a 1.5 millimeter fiber on this building, and you could see, actually, you just couldn't see anything inside. It was just too much glare inside. And so if you remember, I took it down by about to 25%, which really almost was a 0.75 millimeter fiber. And now you can actually start to see some of the structure that's inside there in that little room that I just showed you. So, the amount of light you put into a structure is really important as to what you really want to see. It's extremely easy to do the lighting. Now, I wanted to show you then, so this was the picture I showed you last week, where what I had done was I actually have then the light inside that room, but it also had a spotlight. And I had a spotlight on the outside, and all I did was just stick a fiber in at 45 degrees. Didn't do anything special to the fiber, just nipped it off as usual. And there I got my spotlight. Well, I decided to modify that. And so here's a different shot of that same building. And what I have is, so I have the light, instead of outside the building, I have it just inside, and that's why you can see quite a glow on that small window. But now you can see the glow from a single fiber that's over that door. So the door that's on, I don't know which side you're looking at, but anyway, it's on my right side. And all I did there was, if you remember, I stuck some foil underneath that overhang, just drilled a hole, stuck a fiber in, and voila, I've got the light. And just darkening it down a little bit, sort of, so evening time or almost nighttime, you can get more of an idea of what it would look like. So it's extremely easy to light your buildings up in various different ways without spending much time on it. And I want to talk about one other thing that I find that's tremendously important in modeling layouts, and that's having a good backdrop. And obviously, this is not quite the same as lighting a building, but I think you can see those mountains back there. Well, I have to be very grateful that I actually have a wife who can do that sort of thing. I can ask her to put a tree in there, and within less than a minute or so, the tree will be in there looking just like it should in the right sort of scale. It's unbelievably good. So I'm very, very fortunate to have somebody who can do that. So I want to show you a couple of other pictures. Now, earlier on when I talked about a paper building, and interestingly, I put this up on our Fiber Guild, and I've had considerable interest in how do you light a paper building. So you may remember, I actually had this picture, I just got it off a CD. Somebody was selling them at a show, and I just pulled one off, and I said, okay, good. I'll take a look at how to light that. And I decided I'm not going to cut out the windows. I'm going to leave the windows completely intact. So what I did was, though, flip it over, and I put foil across the whole back surface. You've seen me do foil, obviously, on that building that we just talked about. But the reason for that is very important, because paper is going to really show everything through, and you don't want to really see all the detail. All you want to see is the effect in the windows. So the foil does a very simple job. Gluing it on, very, very simple. Takes no time to do that, which is great. So the next thing, if you remember what I did, was I took some foam and I just cut out the window shapes. I decided to do that. And then I just really ripped into the foam and created channels, which the fibers are going to go into. So that's what you see there with the fibers. The blue things are actually just putty, which is holding the fibers in place while I glued them using a very tacky glue, which is, it sort of doesn't damage the fiber at all. And so what you can see is the fibers run up and sort of hit the top of that the little hole there of the window, because I wanted to make sure that the light looked as though it was coming from a ceiling light in that building. So, and then I collected the fibers, as you can see, down through a common channel and out through the base. And if you remember, that was the effect. So, and you can see the light is actually coming from the top, as though it looks as though there's a light in the ceiling of those rooms. So again, very, very simple to do. The other thing I didn't show you was, if you remember, I'll just go take you back to this picture. At the top, you see it says Todd Gillette Drum Company. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could do anything fun with that. Well, I made a bit of a mess of it, as you're going to see. And there it is. So actually, what I did was I actually put some fiber behind the piece of paper, stood it out a little bit from the wall, and now I've actually got a lit signage on the building. And all that is I just took 5 fibers, glued them together on a piece of wood, thin piece of wood, stripped them. In other words, I just used a Dremel tool and just used a sanding disc. I went straight down and back along them. And actually, I've got too much light coming out on the right-hand side where the fibers come into it and not quite enough on the left. So I need to modify that and work on it a bit. But it's kind of a fun thing to do. Anybody got any questions for that before I just want to cover a couple of other things?
What do you do for your light source?
So, okay, so my light sources, I have, this is one of them. So this is my lamplighter, lamplighter 2. So I have various different lamplighters. This one's actually got a remote on it, so I can just turn it on. And there's my light coming out. There's a whole bunch of fibers I got stuck in here to show you a couple of things. I've got that. I do have a smaller one. And I'll just hold up this piece of paper. So I've actually got a lamplighter 1. We got the 2, and right now the 2S is off the shelf. So we're having just some challenge on the manufacturing of that one, quite honestly. But the lamplighter 1 takes half, well, the lamplighter 2 is double the capacity of the 1. And what it is it's a really high intensity LED bulb that's inside this box. And that has heat sinking in it so it doesn't get hot, and optics and electronics to make sure that it actually gets the light into the fiber. And that's the complex part, and that's the part we sort of developed and put together. Does that make sense?
It does. How do you terminate it in a room? Like if you nip off where you want it to be, now you still have only a pipe. There's no globe on it or anything.
Right.
How do you do that?
So all you do is, right, you don't actually need to have any, all you do is just cut the end of the fiber off and you've got your light. And your light is going to disperse from the end. But actually, you're asking a great question, because a customer came to me the other day and he said, do you know what I did? He said, do you see that? What I did was actually, I've got a little globe on the end of there, which is nothing other than a bead that I bought at Joanne Fabrics. Now, mind you, I have to be careful walking at Joanne Fabrics with necklaces, because some people get the wrong idea. But after I get out of there, I cut the string off and then just stick the beads onto the end of the fiber. And this way there's a glow at the end, as you can see, but there's also a glow to the side. So if I was doing this with this building, for example, and it's possibly going to be a little bit too bright. Let's see, where are we? Yeah. So you can see that really gives me plenty of light up into that building. In fact, that's too much, and it's way too much into this part. So yeah, so you can do various tricks with it, but mostly I don't do anything with the fiber. I just cut it and I let the light reflect off the surfaces, and that's where I'm going to get my lighting.
What about if you want, like we have, I have in my living room, dining room, there's a globe light. And the way we used to achieve it on fiber was to heat the end of it.
Yeah.
So that it would melt into a ball. Is that feasible on this?
Yep, very feasible. It's just a plastic. So in fact, I just go over my wife's gas stove, which is nice. I just literally take a fiber and go,
Yeah.
take a look. And I usually measure the diameter. And if I've increased it by about 50 to 75%, then I'm going to get a nice mushroom on the end of that fiber. Yeah, so it all depends what effects you want from the fiber. So, I mean, we obviously do have these globe lamps. I've got so much fiber here. I don't know what I'm doing here. I just sort of threw a whole lot of stuff on my table when coming here. Okay, so you can see those are globe lamps. So they're actually got a stem down them, and then we put a globe on the top of it. So, and we've got carriage lamps as well. So those are nice. They all come with fiber. You should just sort of stick them in and straight into the lamp lighter.
Okay.
But I'll show you some other tricks you can do, which people like. So I took a piece of aluminum tubing and actually crimped it onto this 1.5 millimeter fiber. And then I took some very much smaller fibers and put them in the top of it. So it's rather like you'd expect to see in those lights, remember those fiber lamps that they had? But I stick this up into a tree, and that gives me that beautiful effect of a tree being lit with, some lights in it, as you might have out in a beer garden or something like that. So very, very simple effects that you can get from it. One of the other things I'd like to show you, which has nothing to do with lighting a building, but it has to do with, if you had a turnout, we actually sell kits now that give you the lighting for a turnout. And it remembers which way the turnout is switched, so that these little dwarf lights, and this is a nature one, they actually then give you the right color. This is just stuck into my lamp lighter, which doesn't know anything about direction. It's just I stuck the two fibers in. So I can show you that a bit more closely, probably. Yeah. So that just sticks down into the layout, and you just put it by your turnouts. The other thing that people are really enjoying is the railroad crossings. So we have those in all sorts of sizes. We have them in O, HO, and as well as N. In fact, I can't show you an N because we just ran out of them. We just had a big run on them over Thanksgiving. But you got those, and that comes with a bell and a whole kit. And that allows you to really be able to use fiber in a number of different ways across the layout. So both animation as well as then with the illumination. Okay,
here's the unseen question. How do you corral all this stuff underneath the layout?
Yes. So when you end up with a fiber spaghetti, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I just created that. The easiest way that I've found is I probably should show you my under the layout, but I actually don't corral it very much at all. I just take the fiber in and run it up to wherever I want, and I cut it to the right length usually, and that way I know exactly where every fiber is going. But I usually put the box, the lamp lighter box, I'm going to put that somewhat central to where I'm going to be running the fibers. So,
right.
Because they bend fairly easily. So I'm going to put this in the middle, say, of a 3-foot spread. So I've got 6 foot on either, 6 foot spread total, but only 3 foot on either side. You can use what's called a split loom, or you can use heat shrink tubing just to stuff it down. Don't heat shrink it, but just, it's just a nice tube that's cheap to buy. Plenty of that stuff. So a number of different ways, particularly if you don't want to see it. Some people ask me, well, shall I paint it black? And I went, oh, no, that's horrible. I hate painting. The easiest thing is just take the heat shrink tubing, stick it over it, and you're done. And you don't have to worry about it.
So for all of us with OCD and like to have things nice and neat underneath, what's the minimum radius you can bend this stuff?
It's really about a fifth or 5 times the diameter of the tubing itself, of the fiber itself. So, for example, I can really bend that around quite far, but that's a 1.5.
So that's a plastic fiber?
It's plastic fiber. Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Don't ever touch glass fiber.
No kidding.
Horrible stuff. But let's take a smaller fiber, and with this fiber, I can actually tie a knot in it. So, they're very flexible. It's a PMMA fiber plastic. You'll see on my website, blogs, as well as on my video site, where I talk about how to bend the fiber. And that's the easiest thing to do. You just stick it in boiling water, put a tube on either side of where you want the bend to be for two reasons. One, it keeps those straight. Two, more importantly, it keeps your hands out of the boiling water. And then you can just easily create a bend. It takes 3 seconds. Pull it out. It sort of cools almost instantaneously, and you've got a perfect bend. It's very nice. On the website, by the way, on Google, if you just Google that, they'll tell you to use a hot air gun. And that's the best way to create boiled spaghetti. So I don't do that. Jim, thank you. It's been really fun. I enjoy doing this stuff, as you can tell.
Michael, thank you so very much. You really helped a lot of us understand what your product's all about. And for that, I really thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Okay, all the best to everybody.
So thanks for watching, and we hope model railroading is still fun for you, including bringing your scenery to life with fiber optic lighting. Remember the slogan, lighting without wiring. It will put a smile on your face.